of that is also being cut. So I think a phase down is appropriate for an organization that has served the county, and at one time we believed it was core to our mission.
Great, thank you.
Do I have a second?
I'll second for discussion.
Okay. Any further discussion? Supervisor Nelson?
Well, I had several comments last week. I won't repeat them, but, you know, there is, as part of this $300,000, there are $99,000 for this sort of police interface. I was not on this board when the review of whether or not to have a police commission type model, and I understand that this $99,000 fund was some sort of a compromise to come up with a method. You know, I respect and appreciate the acts of my prior colleagues, so there was a purpose. And all I can tell you is, you know, I represent North County. In Fullerton, you know, we had a homeless man beaten to death right in the middle of the street, didn't commit any crime. I don't even think he was accused of committing a crime. I was suspicion whether or not somebody may or may not have been looking in car windows. We don't even know if the suspicion was involved this guy. You know, 2 of the police officers are being charged with serious felonies, 1 murder. It's unheard of. And within 5 days of that incident, the photographs were released to international media that this guy had just been pulverized. I mean, you've all seen the photos. I'd be shocked if any of you hadn't. But if this program for interface between the citizens and the police had any purpose, it was at that moment, not a month later, not 2 months later. It was at that very moment. And, you know, my father-in-law is a retired heart surgeon. Great plaque on the desk when you talk about being needed. If you're needed and you're not there to answer the call, there's no point to it. It's great to be needed, but when you're needed, you got to be there at the moment you're needed. And this commission wasn't there then. I've heard different, well, we were around, we participated in dialogue later. Hey, we had a crisis and we had a need. And the crisis and the need didn't meet each other. And it festered and it was ugly. And there were people screaming in the streets. I don't want to overstate it, but I mean, we were close to total mayhem for a couple of weeks there. Went on all summer. And eventually, the Human Relations Commission got involved, although probably more to the satisfaction of the city than the citizens that were ready to flip the place upside down and set fire to it practically. 3 of the council members were ultimately recalled, and some kind of dialogue's gone on in the meantime. But when I checked with the people that were involved in sort of starting the protests and getting all this going, you know, it were those crucial couple first weeks where they needed the help. After that, after all these other items were set in motion, it was, you know, the rest is sort of history at this point. But I haven't been real supportive because I felt let down. I felt like, you know, we fund this. It's been here for 41 years. When you need it, if it's not there, what's the purpose? You know, you build a brand new fire station, you have all these guys trained, your house sets on fire, and pretty soon it's ashes, and then the guys roll up and want to tell you about all their training and all the things they could do for you, and all you're looking at is a lot full of smoldering ash. Doesn't help you. So just on a separate note, with regard to this, quote, classic double dipping, I do want to point out, I don't have an issue with the particular circumstance because I think it was appropriate at their urging that they separated from the government. But let's be clear here. What you have is a director who left county employment, took a pension, and the next day essentially doing the same job at the same desk. If we don't set our foot down and make clear that that is not something that, other than an extraordinary circumstance, we don't support, you know, what's next? I can name names, and we have public defender. He's here. I see him lifting his head up. You know, is he going to go run a nonprofit public defense agency, retire one day and go to work the next? It's not classic double dipping, but we know what's going on. We have a director of housing in the back. That could be a nonprofit. Yeah, that's not really what county retirement is set up to do. I don't want to be part of gaming systems. That's not the reason that I oppose this, but I don't want anyone to misunderstand. there are a lot of department heads and managers at the county that would be more than happy to retire at, late 50s, early 60s, the way our system's set up, and go run for the same salary for the next 5 years, the very same thing they did on the county payroll. So as a practical matter, I don't support that type of thing. There are unique circumstances, but they are unique. And I don't want anybody thinking that that's a new model to avoid the classic double dipping, because it is what it looks like. I'd agreed to, in my motion last week, continue funding the $99,000 because I think it matters to my colleagues. I thought it was a compromise. I mean, I understand it wasn't seen as that, but I don't support the compromise at this point because I don't see it as much of a compromise. I mean, if we believe that we ought to be funding this, we should fund it. If we don't, we need to make a serious step toward getting out of this business. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Nelson. Supervisor Wynn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually have a different perspective of Supervisor Nelson. In my district, the Human Relations Commission immediately came forward, helped us with the situation where a council member in my district made some comments about another community, and they were the parent of this situation for us. It really had to calm down, not only working with the city, but also work with the community and the members and the business community as well. And so I do appreciate them being there when we need them. And I think that's why we should continue the Human Relations Commission. And the comments in regards to the so-called retirement double dipping, I agree with my colleagues. I'm not supportive of that. But I think in this case, not to say that I am supportive in this case, but this case, my understanding is that 3 positions were eliminated last year, and that was his job. He had no choice but to retire. I mean, Rusty has been with the county over 30 years. He wanted to keep his job. But the county last year, given the crisis we had after we passed our budget, the state stole the money from us. We eliminated 3 positions within that department. There's only 3, and that was his job as well. And so I just wanted, I know that we all have different opinions as well, but I want to make sure that the public also see the other sides, that, this individual, has, I don't necessarily agree with him, nor the commission all the time. I've made these comments before. I can't agree with everybody all the time. But his position was eliminated. He had no choice but to take a retirement. And thank goodness that, he stayed on board. Should we ask him or consider, actually phasing out and retiring? Let's get a succession plan in place. But, to say that he came back at his choice because he wanted to double dip, I think it's quite unfair because we eliminated his job. There was no other position unless we make up another one for him to keep that position in that for the Human Relations Commission. And so, Supervisor Bates, I second your motion. I'm still supportive of keeping us at 302. So maybe if I can ask you to stay at 302 this year and send a message to the commission, hey, we are going to consider phasing down. If we can do that, I would appreciate it. If not, I'd rather keep the commission and lose the $50,000 this year, and we will consider. This is not any commitment of mine to the public that I want to eliminate the commission in any way, but we could consider giving the monthly reports telling us what you've done, what you haven't done, what can be done, what you ought to do into next year, and consider whether we should continue to phase it down. But if you would consider, Supervisor Bates, to stay where we're at today, 302, because I think it's pretty dramatic to cut the funding immediately. But I will commit to you that I will support a $50,000 reduction for next year, and then consider a consideration of phasing down. I'm pleading to you, asking if you would consider that.
Thank you, Supervisor Wynn. Supervisor Bates?
At this point in time, since we have a motion and a second on the floor, unless you're removing your second, I'm not prepared to do that, given that I spent a lot of personal time and staff time on developing a compromise. I would like to respond to Supervisor Nelson's comments. I certainly share the concern regarding whether the commission was present in the early stages, at the very beginning of the Fullerton situation. My understanding is that the commission waits for a call. That's something that needs to be looked at, once again, in terms of their mission and when they respond to situations throughout the county. Only with a specific protocol will we know if they are serving the interest regionally of the county. And so that's something that very definitely, I think, needs to be reviewed going forward. With regards to the classic double dipping versus a perceptual double dipping, I'm not prepared to take government's reach into the private sector, whether that's nonprofit or totally, a corporation. Anybody who's worked here 30 years and has an expertise in a private organization wants to take advantage of that and is supported by a capitalistic society. I'm not prepared to interfere with that. So my comments regarding double dipping and being an oversight of that here as a steward of the taxpayer dollar has to do with government. Having people retire from here and come back and take the exact same job within county government is where I think we have the problem, and it's certainly been focused on at the state level. Our governor is focusing on that in his pension reform measures. I do believe our judges serve for many years, retire, and then are available to what I believe is private or at least semi-private jams where they provide their expertise in mediation and arbitration. I certainly wouldn't want to interfere with that process, and I think if we set ourselves on that course, we're in danger of violation of civil liberties, frankly. So I want to stick with the proposal and see if it's going to fly, and if it isn't, then obviously there'll be another motion.
Thank you, Supervisor Bates. Supervisor Campbell.
I was thinking of a situation that occurred in my district in Anaheim Hills about 2 years ago. There was a cross burning on the home of a black family. 9 or 10 o'clock at night. Next morning, Rusty and his commission members were there to work with the family and the people in the neighborhood. I believe that occurred because there is a protocol with the city of Anaheim, and that they do work with the chief of police there very well. So that's an instance where they did show up and worked with the neighbors and gave support to that individual, that family very quickly. As it relates to the $50,000, Supervisor Bates, I'm prepared to support that. You took the time to look at this. There has been a glide down. Our chairman proposed last week moving to $200,000 as a continual glide down, as we've done with others. This is a time that we have to be responsible with the numbers. I know we could probably hold out for the $300,000 that Supervisor Wynn and I would prefer, but frankly, I don't want to drop down to $200,000, which may be the default that I go to. So I'd rather take a bird in the hand, candidly, and support that and see that that goes forward, and hope that, since I'm going off the board this year, that the board will look at continuing support in some fashion to the Human Relations Council.
Thank you, Supervisor Campbell. Any further discussion? Is there any opposition to the motion? So passes 4-1. Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Bates. That takes us now to item 59.
Under OC Community Resources, receive and file 10-year plan to end homelessness status report and authorize submission of 10-year plan to end homelessness status report on a semi-annual basis.
Colleagues have invited Stephen Kite to give a report. Stephen has served as the Commission to End Homelessness as chief executive, and recently provided us with notice that he will be moving to Columbus, Ohio, because his lovely wife got a job offer there, and they're going to be moving. So he's going to give an oral report as opposed to a PowerPoint presentation. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. First of all, I want to thank you very much for the opportunity to serve the Commission on Homelessness and the community in this position. I'd like to take a few moments and give you an update as to where we are and some ideas perhaps going forward. The core of the 10-year plan in homelessness is really about building a comprehensive system that brings in all the necessary resources to kind of bring to bear to end homelessness. What we have today is a kind of a system of loosely affiliated, very good agencies, but neither one of them have the wherewithal, the competencies, or the capacity to really fix the problem. We need to bring all of the resources in. And that's really what's been going on in the past really 12 months through the implementation groups. The idea really is to do what Stanford called as a collective impact, where you bring in resources. Now, I'll use employment services as perhaps the best example. What we have today are a number of agencies that work with their families, work with their clients. They try to provide employment services. You know how difficult it is to find employment. And the idea that a nonprofit whose primary goal is housing is also going to be very good at teaching someone how to get a job or helping them, it doesn't really work very well. So one of the things that's gone on with the implementation groups is to talk to all the resources we have around the community that are engaged in employment and bringing to them the attention of the issue amongst homelessness and bringing them to the implementation groups and part of the plan. And part of that also is then building trust amongst the providers that someone else is going to come in and help them. And that's really a big issue. And I want to really say here, my thanks to the implementation group leaders, to Larry Haynes, Scott Larson, Alan Roeder, and Jim Palmer, because they've done an absolutely fantastic job as volunteers of bringing all of these providers together and starting this process. They've gotten the providers to agree to look at having a coordinated assessment and entry system, which in essence says they're willing to give up to another entity really the say on what clients are going to take. That is a huge move. And that particular effort's being led under Larry Haynes' group by Max Gardner of United Way. So these are some really big issues that I really like to see continue to move forward. The other thing in terms of engagement is what Alan Roeder has done with bringing the cities on board. He's got a committee comprised of volunteers, of city managers and city planners. Because one of the issues that we have is that the geography of Orange County is obviously controlled by 34 different cities. So getting them involved has been really important. So I think all that stuff is really great. I can't tell you how much I'm impressed with what the implementation group leaders have done, and I've got a lot of respect for them. One of the really big important part, I think, in terms of the 10-year plan, and that's data. We've really done a lot of work on that. I want to see that that really continues because, once again, you can't manage what you can't measure. And so the work that Jim Palmer and his group has done in building the homeless management information system and building all these resources is really important. The idea is really we should be funding outcomes, not outputs. For example, we want to know how many people became housed, not how many counseling sessions were held. That's a really important shift. And that shift will make itself known, and you will start to fund programs rather than agencies. And that's another big deal. Disappointment I have, because not everything has worked the way I'd hoped, was my inability or my lack of success in bringing in private funding. I think in large part, that's because I underestimated the degree to which private funders looked at the commission and the work that we were doing as a county effort. And so we've done a lot of work in trying to make this more open to recognize that it's really about the community. And so the bright spot, I think, has been the past couple months is bringing some other entities in to be more involved and led in large part by Max Gardner in United Way. And I think that's a relationship that can be strengthened and built and will help bring other private funders into this whole process. And finally, I'd like to make an editorial, if I could speak through the chair, not so much to the county, but to the people behind me, the press and the community. One of the other disappointments I've had is since I started this job is a number of people that look to the county or want to find a way to hold the county responsible for homelessness or lack of success. And around the country, those areas that are most successful implementing a 10-year plan are not led by government. It's not a government problem alone. It's a community issue. And what I'd like to say to the press and the members of the community is, we don't want to reduce the efforts that the county is making or the cities are making, but we need to step up the efforts that other people are making. I think a lot more attention should be paid for the other parts of the community and what they're doing, and a lot less attack on what the county is doing. You guys are great, and I appreciate the support you've given us. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions for Mr. Kite? Supervisor Nelson?
No question, but thank you so much for your comments. I think you hit the nail right on the head. Sorry to see you go. And your comments, you can't measure, you can't manage what you can't measure. And measuring outcomes, not output. Good advice. And I really appreciate your comments.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Nelson. Supervisor Wynn?
Thank you, Mr. Ash. I have no comment. I just want to thank you, Steve, for all your work, and best of luck. You'll definitely miss Orange County.
I will miss it. I will
The
think of
weather,
you
the climate, the
deeply in February.
people. Again, thank you.
All right, thank you very
For
much.
taking a task that was just an idea to where it is today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just real quick on the agenda item, it's a receive and file. I know that there's phase 3 in here. I know you've heard this from me, but I just want to make sure that my support of the receive and file doesn't necessarily states my support for anything in particular in here. On phase 3, it says the commission has been working with the city of Santa Ana on potential use of the former Santa Ana Transit Terminal as a multi-service center, emergency shelter. I know that they've been in communication with the city of Santa Ana, and I think there's a lot of work that has to be done there, whether that's the site or another location. But I just want to make that comment publicly to make sure that I'm not locking myself into a specific support today.
Thank you, Supervisor Wynn.
Thank you.
Chicken.
That's okay. I'll live with that.
Mr. Kite, Steve, thanks very much. It's been a pleasure to work with you, and I'm very sorry to see you go, but I understand your family situation. Colleagues, in the interim, our executive committee has requested that Karen Roper serve as the interim CEO to cover while we go through a process on where we go next. And with that, we are also having, as a commission, we're going to try and do a sort of an off-site retreat, to kind of get together and look at what we've done. This last year, we've done a lot, and it's been kind of amazing. It's like when you step into a calm pool, like a pond, and all of a sudden, all the dirt and everything is just going everywhere. And it's like we got everybody engaged. We really got a lot of people looking at things, and now it's time to see everything that we've shaken up, kind of see how we kind of make it all work together and get our focus. We've worked on Laura's Law, and we've just made a recommendation that the Board of Supervisors should adopt Laura's Law if the extension of Laura's Law under AB 1569 includes the ability to use Prop 63 funding. If we have it written down so our county council is very comfortable with the funding source, then we can afford to cover it. As Steve mentioned, our implementation groups have been just doing a super job. It's been great. And Supervisor Wynn, yes, we've been looking at year-round emergency shelters, not just the armories in Santa Ana and Fullerton. And I'm just really pleased to see Supervisor Nelson take a real active role in that regard as we're working with the city of Fullerton. It was a one-year glide down. As we were talking about glide downs, and we're very well aware of the financing issues. And so we have some interesting ideas. I've been working with OC Partnership, been working with United Way, and everyone's really around the table. So I'm looking forward to what you've incubated, if I could use that word, Steve. But we want to wish you all the best. And
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you.
Now, do I need a motion to receive and file, Madam Clerk? Okay. Then I'm happy to move it. Any further discussion? Any opposition? Okay, it passes unanimously. That takes us now back to the beginning of our discussion calendar, and that means we will now Do number 38.
Under the Clerk Recorder, approve agreements with Los Angeles County Registrar Recorder County Clerk for system maintenance of multi-county electronics recording delivery system Secure and for development of Secure version 3.
This is an all-district item. Any discussion? Do I have the good housekeeping seal from Mahesh Patel? Okay. Any opposition? Carries 5-0. Colleagues, we can group these contracts if you wish. We can go 39 through 50 and number 54. Does anyone have any opposition to that recommendation? Okay. Oh, Supervisor Nelson?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to comment. First and foremost, I don't have any issue with the financing. I have no issue with the services at all. The first year I was here, I was sworn in and literally voted on the budget, I think the same week, the same day, as a matter of fact. Last year, I mentioned that I would not be supportive of any more one-year agreements. I meant it. I don't think it's a best business practice for this county to have one-year agreements with these agencies when all of the equipment, everything we do is long-term. I don't know if the magic is 5 years or 10, nor do I really care. I just know that it's not one. And other than the fact I'm not opposed in any way to the service provided, the cost for it, or the satisfaction the cities have. I do not support doing this on a one-year revolving door basis.
Supervisor Nelson, I just was asking from procedural standpoint, we don't really have, the clerk hasn't read the items yet or brought them up. I'm just wondering if I could interrupt you and then do that
No,
first.
you can't.
And I can't? Okay. You are the vice chair. There's some, gravitas that comes with that title. Is that okay?
I'll just finish. I'm going to be a no as to the items, but I think it's a good idea to move them all at once.
Okay, great. Madam Clerk.
Yes, this will be items 39 through, sorry, I had it written the other way.
Through 50 and then number 54.
Yes, thank you. Approve agreements and amendments to agreements for fiscal year 2012-13 law enforcement services for the cities of Aliso Viejo, Dana Point, Laguna Niguel, the Orange County Transportation Authority, the city of San Juan Capistrano, Villa Park, Laguna Hills, Lake Forest, Mission Viejo, city of Rancho Santa Margarita, San Clemente, Stanton, and the city of Garden Grove and Laguna Woods.
Now you're sneaking in Garden Grove, which is number 52.
Oh, you're right, that is slightly different, so omit 52.
Okay. So we'll pull out number 52, do that separately then?
Yes.
Okay. Colleagues, Supervisor Nelson.
50 stands out because it's not a one-year agreement. So I'm not opposed to 50. It's just an extension. But the one-year agreements, please show me as a no.
Any other?
I'll move the items.
Okay. thank
Second.
you. Any further discussion? Is there a representative then from the Sheriff's Department that maybe perhaps Rick Dostal, is he present? I have a couple questions for you, Rick. Supervisor Bates, do you have questions?
Actually, Rick might address the issues regarding the contracts, I think, because we had the roundtable meeting, and so if you'd cover that, then I don't need to repeat that.
Certainly. At the board meeting about a month or so ago, the board received recommendations on the length of terms of the contracts. And the board direction at that time was to get back together with the city managers and work on, developing longer-term contracts for fiscal year 13 and 14, so the next fiscal year. So we are prepared to do that. We have already met with the city managers, the smaller group of the technical advisory committee that you're aware of, and we've discussed this issue. They've gone back and either recently or about to meet with the rest of the city managers to discuss this, so we are well underway in addressing that issue.
Contract.
So next year's contracts, we do anticipate coming back with the longer-term contracts.
Mr. Dostal, thank you, Supervisor Bates. Mr. Dostal, I think the concern that some of us have is that it looks to me that you're charging the cities the same pension plan contribution rate that the county is being charged by the Orange County Employer Retirement System. And since we're amortizing some of these unfunded liability costs over a long period of time, 20-plus years, if a city decides to migrate away from the county, La Habra uses the LA County Fire Department, who knows what kind of iterations might come up. What happens to that liability? Because it appears to me we're undercharging if we're doing a year-by-year contract. We should be charging them a lot more for the rate to, in a sense, truncate that amortization period, which would mean that their rates would fly all over the place year by year, but at least we would be, even, and then they have every ability to leave. So maybe you could help me with that. How do we, somewhere along the way, make sure that this county is compensated for an expense incurred by somebody on a contract basis?
This was the key point of the study that was just done a couple months ago. And I think that it is correct that if a city were to leave the Orange County contract, then we would either be left with the change in the UAAL. If it goes higher, then we would be paying that off over the period of time as calculated by OSERS. If it goes down during that period of time, again, we would, I guess, stand the benefit to that. So the rate that the policy is right now is we charge the retirement rates that are passed on to us through OSERS. And I think the intent of the board last time was to develop longer-term contracts so that the risk of any city leaving might be less. And we would have more assurances to a longer-term commitment, even though these contracts have been long-term to date. So I hope that answers the question.
Well, I think the message is that we need to think long-term for the taxpayer.